Welcome back, and thanks for joining us for Storm Smart, Navigating Hurricane Season. Before the break, we asked you a trivia question. What category does a hurricane become when sustained winds reach 111 miles per hour or higher? And what added risk can that bring inland, even to Lake and Sumter counties? The answer is C, Category 3, life-threatening inland flooding from rainfall. While wind often grabs the headlines, Florida's inland communities frequently face their greatest risk from flooding, especially during slow-moving Category 3 storms. When a hurricane is on the horizon, Leesburg's Public Works team is on the front lines, working to keep the community safe and resilient. From securing roads to maintaining utilities, every detail matters. We're joined in the studio by Leesburg's Public Works Director, Cliff Kelsey. Cliff, thanks you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Katie. Thanks for having me.
Let's start by talking about preparation. How does your department prepare for hurricane season?
Well, Katie, preparation starts well before hurricane season. Typically, when we're coming out of a hurricane season, that's when we start replenishing the stocks of the consumables and the supplies we need during hurricane season. And then we also start looking at our contract vehicles that we need to renew for the upcoming season. So it's pretty much a 365-day-a-year job, but it really ramps up once hurricane season begins on June 1st. Then we start looking at all our SOPs, all our teams that we have assigned where, and we need to replace anybody who has transitioned from the city. And then we also update all our vehicle lists and all our building lists and emergency areas that we need to respond to.
Yeah. I want to look back a little bit at Hurricane Milton. What would you say is the biggest lesson that the Public Works Department learned, and how are you bringing that into the 2025 season?
Good question. So Hurricane Milton was unique in the fact that we were pre-soaked from Helene, so the saturation levels were already high. And what Milton did was it identified areas of the city that were prone to flooding. Although we didn't experience any major flooding throughout the city, it did identify areas that we do need to do some work. So we have commissioned several stormwater projects throughout the city to help mitigate those issues to make sure that it's not a problem in the future. And then the other lesson learned was we have to have many options for debris removal because when a storm of that size hits, our contractors are spread out throughout the state. And so having multiple vendors and multiple different options, such as rental contracts in place so that our folks can use claw trucks to help remove debris, we want to make sure we exhaust all resources so that we can bring the city back to normal in as short amount of time as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Milton took down a lot of trees last year.
That it did.
When a hurricane is approaching, the Public Works Department provides sandbags for residents. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. So typically when we're looking at the forecast and a storm is going to hit us or affect us in any way, we'll order sand and we'll set up a sandbag station. Our typical site was the Susan Street Athletic Complex, but now that that's undergoing a major construction renovation, we're going to shift that to the old closed city landfill off of Neely. So we'll order the sand and residents can come, and it's a self-serve station. We'll provide up to 10 sandbags per resident, and there'll be shovels and sand, and Public Works folks will be there to assist, but typically the resident will fill their own sandbags, load it up, and take them home.
Gotcha.
And then also the county also provides several sandbag stations as well. Pear Park typically is a local site that residents can use as well.
So what happens if someone is struggling or physically unable to fill sandbags?
Good question, Katie. So unfortunately, the city doesn't have the resources to provide sandbags to citizens that are physically impaired and can't come to the sandbag station on their own. But we would ask that, maybe ask a friend, a relative, a neighbor. Everybody should be looking out for each other during these times.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of sandbag placement, when and where should residents use sandbags?
Right. So everybody feels like they have to do something when a storm's coming, so they think, I need to sandbag. But if you don't really see flooding at your residence or wherever you think you might want to place a sandbag, then you're probably not going to see one during this storm. So sandbags, typically you want to go anywhere water would penetrate the facility. You know, garage door openings, front doors, patio doors, things of that nature. And we're pretty far away from the coast, so we don't need to go really high. 2 to 3 feet should suffice. So you don't need to overdo it. If you're on the second floor of a condominium or an apartment building, you probably sandbags aren't necessary.
Now, we touched on this a little bit, but flooding and debris are two of the biggest challenges that we see with hurricanes, and Hurricane Milton was no exception there. What does your team do in advance to mitigate those issues?
Okay, well, I'll start with flooding. So our stormwater teams, they're out clearing stormwater inlets, they're clearing swells, they're clearing anything where water flows to make sure we don't restrict the flow of water. We get pre-storms and just the falling of leaves, and typical vegetative grounds management will put debris into the stormwater drains and where the water goes. So we want to make sure there's nothing obstructing the flow of water, so it flows naturally, gets it to where it wants to go. Another thing we look at is all our pumps. We want to make sure our pumps are up and running, tested. We have hoses, we have all the supplies we need if we need to move water from one area to another to provide some relief. For vegetative debris management, we're always going out, we're looking at dead limbs on overhangs and taking care of anything that could potentially be an issue during a storm, get it out of there before the storm arrives. And then one thing residents can do is to prepare is before the start of hurricane season or before a storm approaches, they can do the same in their lawns and go around and see if there's any dead limbs or anything they think is gonna be affected by the storm. They can take care of it early, but we just check with your local vegetative debris pickup schedule to make sure we can come get it out of the yard before the storm hits. Typically, every resident will get 1 debris pickup per week. We'll do bulk pickup early in the week and then vegetative debris later in the week.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just got my trees done before hurricane season, so I'm very happy to do that.
Good job.
Thank you. When a storm is actively impacting Leesburg, what are the public works crews doing?
Okay, so as the storm's going over, typically, as you know, roads close at 35 miles an hour. We ask everybody to remain inside, and the crews are at their designated spots riding out the storm. They have all their supplies at hand, vehicles at hand, equipment at hand. So as soon as the storm passes and those streets get back to being designated safe for the crews to get out there and start clearing debris, they get out and they go to work. The main thing they're trying to do is clear any obstacles in the way of roads so that emergency services can get to where they need to go. But during the storm, they're just hunkering down and waiting for the storm to pass and getting ready to get to work.
Right, right. So when that storm does pass, what is your department's #1 priority?
Yeah, as I stated, the #1 priority is get the roads back open, starting with the major thoroughfares. We want those emergency vehicles to be able to get to residents should they need to. Another priority is making sure utilities we haven't lost any utilities. So we want to make sure everybody has water and the ability to flush their toilets. And Public Works is helping the electric department with trees. They can handle their own here and there, but we also like to help one another because we're all part of the same team. So get the utilities up and running, keep the streets open, and then restore the city back to normal as quick as possible because we all want to get back to normalcy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Cliff, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you so much for all the work that your department does to keep us safe during the hurricane season.
Thank you, Katie, and I just think the folks out there that are boots on ground making it happen, they're the real heroes.
Absolutely, definitely. We hope you found Storm Smart Navigating Hurricane Season helpful and informative. With hurricane season officially underway, now's the time to check your emergency kit and finalize your family's storm plan. Don't have a kit? Visit ready.gov for resources and a complete checklist. Stay safe, stay prepared, and we'll see you next time.